Okay, so quick recap. Spidey saved Norman, got attacked by Venom, and Ben visited Jameson. That's just the previous issue. So, hi, hey, and hello there. Obi-Han here, and welcome back to the Comic High Ground. Now that Dark Web is completed, I'll be covering more than just one issue per video. Honestly, this event wasn't as long as I thought it'd be, but I guess that's a good thing. So, let's get started. We start off here with a flashback of the moment that Peter and Ben squared off at the conclusion of the Spider-Man Beyond arc. We see Ben asking Peter to put the helmet on, but things are a bit different than how they actually happened. Peter takes the helmet and crushes it, saying that Ben should get his own life, and proceeds to laugh maniacally. Peter then Spartan kicks Ben into some chemicals, saying, "Eat psycho-reactive goo, clone job." Yeah, that's the dialogue they chose to go with there. And honestly, if this wasn't an indication that this is all in Ben's brain and that Ben has a few screws loose, then I don't know what is. Now, back in the real world, Peter and Ben are squaring off, and Ben tells Peter that he sent him to hell. And Peter's like, that's not how I remember it. When Ben argues that is how he remembers it, Peter's like, didn't you just say that your memories were destroyed? Which is a good point that Ben should really listen to. If your memories have been destroyed, or at the very least in this case damaged, then maybe it's time to reevaluate what you're doing. In any case, the fight begins as Peter gets the upper hand and hits Ben with a scooter. Yep, that's right, a scooter. And he tells him that he's been doing this way longer than Ben. And real quick, I gotta mention, this is probably the funniest thing in the issue. While Ben is looking for Peter after being hit by the scooter is like, one of you pieces of wanna tip me back up? And that got a laugh out of me because I keep getting thrown off by these sentient objects. But anyway, Ben is looking for Peter, and Peter managed to sneak up behind him. Now, here's a new trick that Ben had picked up. His spider sense does alert him of danger still, but it has got an upgrade. As Peter approaches him, he is zapped by the spider sense. Like, they show up as some type of bolts of lightning. Like, you know how the spider sense usually looks, how they have the zigzags, the lines and everything. But in this case, when Peter walks up to them, he's zapped by them. So Ben mentions that his spider sense has become offensive. Alright, being honest, Peter's spider sense was already busted as it was, but this new addition to Ben's puts it on another level. The spider sense that's both defensive and offensive is really powerful. And after Ben catches Peter off guard, he then showcases a new trick. He uses his web to make like this sort of glowing axe. Well, I guess it's not entirely new. Peter's been making objects out of his web for years now. It's just not something that's brought to attention that often. And also, Ben follows up his axe by making a sword, so he's creating these weapons pretty quickly. Meanwhile, across New York, we see Maddie, Janine, and the now awoken Venom discussing the next part of their plan. They're at the X-Men treehouse in New York, which is the headquarters and residence for the X-Men in New York. They apparently intend on sicking Venom on them, which they do as Hallows Eve, aka Janine, puts on a Frankenstein mask and Spartan kicks Venom towards the treehouse. We got a lot of Spartan kicks in this comic, folks. Back with Ben and Pete, Ben decides to finally use his trump card. He pulls out this orb thing that has Jameson and Robbie trapped inside of it. Obviously, this is your typical hostage situation. So we all know what Peter will do. He's gonna protect people no matter what. Side note, Peter's a better man than most. We got Jameson, who has made his life crap since he was in high school. And we got Robbie, who in recent years fired Peter for something that honestly was kind of messed up. It had something to do with the whole Superior Spider-Man incident and a paper that Ock wrote. Long story short, Peter was fired for plagiarism. But my point is, the average person would probably be like, screw those guys. But we know Peter Parker isn't that type of person. Ben wants Peter to accept going to Limbo, so out of frustration, Peter told Ben to go ahead and send him to Limbo. Suddenly, a massive tentacle monster, you heard that right and you see that right there, appears and yanks Peter into Limbo. When he wakes up, he finds that he's in what looks to be a Daily Bugle, but is being run by monsters. Okay, so apparently we cut to I guess Peter's been there a couple of days, because you see him walking to work, and ahead of him you see like this shark man next to this regular size like mutant looking guy, and the shark guy decides he wants to attack the mutant guy, but Peter kind of steps in, and then he decides to charge Peter, thinking that he can charge Peter Parker, which is just wrong. So Peter pretty much one punch mans the shark guy and knocks all of his teeth out. And Peter kind of makes this joke where he's like, whoa, I mean, I pulled that punch, but I guess. And it's here where you also see that the creatures in this realm have this weird way of talking. Like the creature who Peter saved, he calls him Parker Pete Man. And he's like, oh, hey, it's Parker Pete Man, thank you. And Peter's just kind of like, yeah, okay, well, that's close enough. And walks off. And so we go into the Daily Bugle, where Jameson is surrounded by these creatures, and they're basically yelling at him to act like he does in the real world. And that's part of this whole scenario. All these creatures are supposed to mock what it's like for Peter in his actual life. So for Jameson to be here surrounded by all these creatures, he's scared, and they're yelling at him to be like, you have to be madder, you have to do this, you have to do that. And so Peter arrives and pretty much saves Jameson, because one of the creatures is trying to eat him, and Peter tells all of them to play nice. Now we cut to outside, where Peter's walking outside of the Daily Bugle, where Ben is waiting for him. And Ben is basically like, tough day at the office, and Peter threatens Ben to basically let them all go. And Ben says he would love to, but he also says that he didn't go through all this trouble making Limbo look like his home in order for him to turn down his hospitality. Now, Ben does pick an apple from a tree that he's standing next to, and this is an apple that was seen in one of the previous stories, where basically this apple will zap someone's soul, if I'm not mistaken, because I believe it was used on a bill collector who was chasing Peter Parker down before this story started. Madeline ended up making the guy eat it, and that's what it did. So obviously it's a no-no for Peter to eat this apple, and he knows better than to eat it as well. So he kind of threatens Ben, is like, yeah, look, I'm gonna get out of here, you're not gonna break me, and you should know that, you know me by now. So then we cut to some more creatures, and they're forcing a scorpion down another creature's ear, and the creature ends up turning into Scorpion. And what we see here is that the creatures are all turning themselves into versions of Peter's enemies. So basically Doc Ock, Venom, well, not Venom, but Doc Ock, Scorpion, Electro, things of that nature, all because of this image that Ben is trying to provide, basically to mock Peter Parker's life. And in a way it's really twisted, and it's kind of messed up on Ben's part, but everything Ben has done here has been messed up. In any case, Madeline does comment that this is not what she let him borrow her demons for, to which Ben is basically like, I gotta do what I gotta do. And we see here that the creatures have all become basically versions of the Sinister Six. We see one that calls himself Dr. Octoball, one that calls himself the Grave Goblin, another that calls himself Triceratops, another that calls himself Lazaro, a Kraken the Hunter, and the Gorpion. And they all look really ridiculous, but again, we get the point. Ben is basically copying Peter's life. So we then cut again to the guy who Peter saved, or the creature who Peter saved, and he's dressed as Spider-Man, or at least he has a Spider-Man shirt on, and he's calling himself Parker Man. And Ben is kind of like, we didn't ask for any heroes here, sorry, Madeline. And he webs up like this axe, getting ready to take the guy out. So he runs away, saying Parker Man lives to fight another day. And we cut to Peter and Jameson now. Jameson, who is in his room full of talking objects, so like his bed is alive, and he has these toiletries and stuff that are alive and just talking to him. Peter comes to visit him and let him know that he is formulating a plan to get out, but that Jameson is going to have to basically be ready for his signal. So we then cut again to the creature who Peter saved, and he's walking down the street, and some other bigger creature, I'm calling all of them creatures, but that's basically what they are, stops him, and he's kind of like, okay, well, you know what? You want spider powers? You want to be like Spider-Man? I can help you with that. So he conducts this strange spell and pretty much has the Spider-Man shirt that the creature was wearing turn into like this venom-like substance, and it basically consumes him. We then cut back to the Bugle, which is, I'm assuming, the next day, and we see Jameson telling the creatures that there's a big headline, something about a portal opening to the real world and creatures crossing over into it. So they all go because they're all supposed to be playing their roles as reporters. Spider-Man then sneaks in to get Jameson and Robbie out of there. But while they're trying to escape, we see that the Insidious Six of this realm, they've decided to kind of stand in their way. And it's kind of funny because Peter kind of turns around and he's like, oh boy. And then one of the creatures is like, hello, Crawlwaller. And Peter's like, not even close. So Peter begins to do battle with this version of the Sinister Six. And they start to get the upper hand on him until he's saved. And the person he's saved by, well, let's just say he wasn't expecting it, because he looks up and he's like, how does this keep getting weirder? And we see that he has been saved by the creature who he saved earlier in this story, calling himself Wreck Rap. Yeah. I don't understand the naming in this story at all. But that is it for this issue. We will continue and pick back up with the next one. I hope you all liked it. How do you guys think Peter's gonna get out of this? Because honestly, it seems like Ben is kind of almost thinking of everything. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how he and the X-Men and Mary Jane and Black Cat, because they're there too. It's gonna be interesting to see how all of them get out of limbo, I should say. So yeah, hit that like button if you liked what you saw. Drop a comment to let me know what you thought about all of this. Subscribe if you liked it, and remember, we have the high ground. Catch you later.